Hi everyone, this is Nuresh Mirani from NureshTech.co.in. So today I start a new series where I would try to analyze a few stocks which are making very interesting setups on a little longer term charts, at least on 1, 2, 3 year basis, and also are shaping up for a big move possibly going forward. And these stocks should be kept on radar for the next few weeks and few months also. So today I look at a sector which is the most tracked one in India, which is banking and financials. I would be looking at three banks out here. First is a Axis Bank, second would be Bandhan Bank, and third would be HDFC Bank. So it's a mix of three interesting formations out here. So let us start off with Axis Bank itself. So now when we look at Axis Bank, what is interesting is if you look at the shorter term price action, the stock made a low of almost 630, 650, very close to this bottoms in the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and has bounced back yet again to the 800 to 810 mark. So if you look at this high in February, it was around 815, 16. Very recently, a few days back, it made a top at 816. So if we look at the short term, you have a clear defined range, which is basically 650 on the downside and 815 on the upside, a couple of times here. So it tells you this is almost a 160 pointer range out here. If it can break out above 815 meaningfully, it would be a short term breakout which could actually have a possible upsides of say 150 points also. Then we go a little further and then we notice this price point has been a problem out here as well. The stock saw some move around the quarterly results back in October, and post that the stock took a one-way dive all the way back to 650. So what do we notice here is 815 mark is very important. If we remove out this false start which it had back in October, this becomes a very important price point. Now let us unzoom a little more, and then we look at it in January 2021, wherein most of the banking stocks topped out. It was around 800. So you have another price point at 800. Then you go a little further down back in 2019 as well. This was a price point which was a pain. Now if we zoom up a little, we'll see the price points are again 825, 820, closer to that 816 mark. So for the last 3 years, if I unzoom the whole chart now, we notice that 815 to 820 is a major resistance. And if you were to remove this part out, even if you were to take that part out, there is an all-time high at 867. Now very interesting, even before COVID, 650 was a support level. So if you were to look at the volatility in the last 3 years, we see a big upper band at 810 to 820 levels. Now whenever a stock makes a dash at the same resistance multiple times, the chances of the breakout increase. So in this case, Axis Bank has already hit it almost like 4 to 8 times over the last 3 years. And on the lower end, you can see similar attempts around that 600, 650 mark, which could again be 4 to 8 times. A little behind. So this was a major zone out here as well. So eventually this looks like a structure which could eventually break out above the 800, 820 mark. If that happens with volumes, it would be a strong confirmation, and the minimum upside would be around 160 points or could be higher also. So if you look at this case, very interestingly poised. So we'll be watching out for Axis Bank to be the new leader. Now interesting is the fact that this is the only bank which is very close to a new all-time high compared to the rest of the names. You have HDFC Bank struggling, you have Kotak Bank which is struggling. We've seen a good recovery in ICICI as well as SBI, but the closest to a new 52-week high or an all-time high is Axis Bank. So this is a stock to be kept on watch for a new leadership. Price to watch for is equal to 800 to 820 band. Then we look at another stock which would be Bandhan Bank. Now this is something which has been on our radar for the near term. Now if you look at the pre-Russia-Ukraine crisis, the top was around 332. You will see 332, say 330, 332. So this was the price band pre-COVID. Pre-Russia-Ukraine. Now when we look at it, for the last few days, it's been trying to knock at this resistance of 330 to 335 multiple times. You go a little further, you have this band out here at around that 330, 340 mark. The highest point in between out here around 348. Again out here 355. Now if you were to take a trend line like this, it would be very close to a breakout or already broken out, but the momentum is yet to catch up. Now we go a little further. Why is this price point very important? So if you go back before the whole fall started, this was the band which was a major resistance, which is 400, 430. That would be an ideal target price, but over the last 2 years this has been a major resistance, or rather last 1 year. And why is it interesting to look at it right now? Because over the last few days we've seen a good correction in the indices, but Bandhan Bank has held its fort, trying to break that 330, 335 mark and sustain. So looks very interesting. And if you look at the shorter term range, you'll see the bottoms are higher out here slowly, but it is yet to make a strong price move. So if I were to look at it a little closely, it made a top around here 336.60, 340, 339, and today also it went up to 336. So making a nice flag formation out here. So in the extreme short term, a move above 340 would be a short term breakout, wherein an eventual target price would be closer to 430, or at least a target price of 366, which is just a small one. Ideally I would keep a target price of 430 out here. So very interesting chart formation. Also the fact that on the lower end, in the last 2 falls, it made similar bottoms around that 240, 250 mark. So it's become a range bound stock on verge of a breakout. So the next one to watch out for in the banking space would be Bandhan Bank. As a standard disclosure, I do have exposure here, so I have a positive stance. Then the last one is the most discussed one, which would be HDFC Bank, wherein let us try to look at only purely the charts instead of having a view on what is the scenario around the merger. Now if you look at the price points, very recently back in March with the Russia-Ukraine crisis, it made a bottom around 1292, 1297. Just a week back it came down to 1327, and today also it made a low around 1322. Now if you were to look at it, 1320 to 1290 is a very important support out here. Now if we go a little further, before this fall, you can see there are almost 4 bottoms around this price point, which is again closer to the 1350 mark, 1340 mark. So that got taken out very recently, but did not see a follow-up price action. Now if you go further beyond, pre-COVID, the stock price kept on facing a lot of resistance around the 1300 mark. Out here also it was very close to it, it was 1250 levels. And even out here, it made a top around 1250 before making that breakout move in September, October 2020. So if you look at this band of say 1250 to 1350, it's a very important support band for HDFC Bank. Now on the upside, similarly, it has tried to make that attempt to cross that 1650, 1700 band. It has not been able to. Even though the best of the news, it made almost exactly the same top as it was out here, 1725 and 1722. So simply put, the stock is in this tight range between 1250, 1350 on the lower end, 1650, 1720 on the upper end. So out here, if you have a really long-term view on HDFC Bank and you're ready to accept a stop loss below 1250, it's a risk-reward bet. But given the choices we have in the banking space, there are a few stocks which are trying to make, say, a short-term breakout, like Bandhan Bank, Axis Bank, which is trying to make a 3-year breakout. You would be spoiled for choice in terms of what to go for. I would prefer something like a breakout which is multi-year. So for example, Axis Bank. Why do I say so? So if you look at, just for example, if you look at ICICI Bank, why do you want to be playing breakouts? So if you look at ICICI Bank, pre-COVID, the stock price had a resistance around 550. gave that breakout move, went very quickly to 670. Then in the second wave of COVID, it fell all the way down back to that, retesting that 530, 550 mark, and then made a move to 850. And in that same period of time, HDFC Bank has given you a zero return. So where do you want to participate? You want to participate in stocks which are making such breakout moves, then to participate into stocks which are at supports. So in that case, if I were to compare what happened with ICICI Bank, Axis Bank looks very promising. Bandhan Bank looks very promising in the short term. Axis Bank could possibly be the new leader if this move in the banking space starts in the large cap banking space. So the price point I'll be watching out for is 820. And if one has an exposure and wants to have an exposure in the banking space, in the large cap banking space, it's very clear Axis Bank becomes now the top preference. So this is a quick look at how do we analyze stocks in the banking space. I'll try to keep doing this series going forward. If you like the videos, please share it, subscribe to the channel, as well as subscribe to the app we have, plus the Rigi broadcast channel. For anything else, you can always get back in touch with us on our website on nureshtech.co.in. Thank you so much.